Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the PG Show, where we talk about all things college football, and we have to talk about the upsets that have plagued week 2, ranging anywhere from Nebraska all the way up to Texas A&M. But before we do that, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comments below. What was your favorite game yesterday in week 2? All right, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. All right, so we have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that would be Texas A&M. And so many people came into this season really hyped about what Texas A&M could do with that number 1 recruiting class and just everything that they were going to have the potential to put up. And I use the word potential because there's a difference between production and potential. Kind of the argument that I've been making with OU all year long. They lost so many players in the transfer portal or to the draft. And yes, OU lost a lot of potential, but they actually retained a lot of production. And that's what it is like with the Texas A&M Aggies right now. They have so much potential, but not a lot of production on the field. And you can see it playing out week by week. So last week they played Sam Houston State, and for a while in that game it was close. And they only ended up winning 31-0. And you're like, well, hey, Preston, they won 31-0. They shut out Sam Houston State. Yes, but with the talent that Texas A&M has on the field and their potential, they should have blown Sam Houston State out by 60-plus points. And I don't think anybody would argue that, with especially that talent that they have on that team and all the hype around that team that has been surrounding them all off season. And I want to go ahead and make this point here. The Jimbo Fisher that we're seeing now is not the Jimbo Fisher that we saw in 2013. The Jimbo Fisher that we saw in 2013 had a quarterback. And if you're Texas A&M, you've got to be in 100% crisis mode. Because it's clear that Jimbo Fisher isn't the coach that he was at Florida State. It's just clear. And you have to be asking yourself, he's obviously a great recruiter. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. But is he the right guy for you on the field? And Texas A&M fans have to be scratching their heads, asking themselves, where did we go wrong? Y'all lost to Appalachian State. Really, 17-14 in Kyle Field. Like, how does that happen? How does an SEC program lose to a Sun Belt team? Now, those of you who watch this show and watch me a lot, you will know that I have been really high on Appalachian State this year. Picked them to beat North Carolina. They lost. Picked them to beat A&M. They obviously win that game. They split 2. If you're Appalachian State, that's really good. They're returning people like Chase Bryce. People forget what Chase Bryce did last year. And then, not only that, they've got Cameron Peoples, who yesterday had 19 carries for 112 yards. Then you're returning guys like Deshaun Davis and Christian Wells. And they have so much production that they're returning. And that's the difference from what you're seeing with Texas A&M and Appalachian State. You're seeing a team that is returning production versus bringing in potential. Because it takes a while, and it takes some time to develop potential. But if the production's already there, you're going to be a step ahead of your opponents. And people have to remember, this Appalachian State team last year was actually pretty good. If I remember correctly, I think they were ranked in the top 25 towards the end of last year. And that's saying a lot. Yeah, this Appalachian State team last year went 10-4. They lost to Western Kentucky in again, another bowl game that you're just like, are they making up bowl games at this point? And they lost to a ranked Miami team early in the season by 2 points. So I don't know what the next move is for the Aggies, and I definitely don't know what Jimbo Fisher is going to do next. But you have to wonder if the Aggies and that administration is going to be putting Jimbo Fisher on the hot seat. It's clear that Haynes King Haynes King is not the guy out there at Texas A&M. That's clear. And something needs to happen because next week you have to go play Miami. Now, you're playing Miami at home, but you're still probably going to lose that game. Because I'm just a believer in Miami and what Mario Cristobal is going to do because of what he did in Oregon. And I think Miami is truly back. Additionally, you have to go play Arkansas at home the week after that. Arkansas looks incredible. You're not beating Arkansas at home with the way that this current Aggies team is playing. You might beat Mississippi State, but then you're going to get steamrolled by Alabama. So if you look at it there, that's 3 losses and 2 wins for the Aggies. 2 and 3. Are the Aggies boosters who have lots of money going to be able to put up with this in what Jimbo Fisher's putting out on the field? Because then you got to go play an Ole Miss team. You still have to play a Florida team that a lot of people are high on, even though they lost. An LSU team that at the very end of the season could definitely have it put together. It's going to be rough for the Aggies. It's going to be rough. Jance, if you guys haven't tuned into his show, you guys definitely need to go check it out. I'm going to link it in the comments below. But he's called it. Texas A&M 6-6 this season. And you know what? The past 2 weeks, the more and more I believe him. Because they just don't look good. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if the answer is putting in Max Johnson at quarterback, or if you're putting in Connor Weigman or Eli. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Texas A&M going to have to figure something out. Because you can't keep playing like this, and you can't keep putting out production like this with the amount of money that they're spending on their recruiting classes. I mean, Texas A&M is going to have people decommit from this class, or people hit the transfer portal. Like, it's going to happen. And boosters are going to get antsy real quickly because they want to see something productive with their money. Okay, next up, we got to talk about that Alabama and Texas game, and we got to talk about it a little bit deeper. I know we kind of covered it yesterday with an instant reaction, but we got to talk about how Alabama really could have lost this game. When Quinn Ewers was in the game, Bama did not have an answer. It's just as simple as that. They did not have an answer for the Ewers and Worthy connection. And Xavier Worthy's a dude. He's going to be a first-round wide receiver without the shadow of a doubt. This man's got a lot of talent. And I got to see it firsthand last year against Oklahoma when first play of the game, 75-yard touchdown reception from Xavier Worthy. Now, we could blame Alabama's performance on a weird Saturday. And we always have one of these. We always have a Saturday every year where teams just don't play well. Right? And we saw it with all the upsets yesterday. And maybe we can blame it and just say, hey, you know what? Alabama was part of that curse. It was 115 on the field at kickoff. Like, that Texas crowd was rowdy. Okay, like we can make all those arguments. But at the end of the day, can we make the point that this Nick Saban team that we just watched is not anything like a Nick Saban team that we've ever seen before? Y'all, they had 15 penalties. Alabama has been the pinnacle of college football for over a decade now. And people were penciling in the Crimson Tide to be a college football playoff lock. But quite honestly, after this performance yesterday, I'm not 100% confident that Bama is going to be in the playoffs. Because the SEC West and the SEC in general just looks a little bit more wide open. And Georgia apparently looks like the best team in the country and the best team in the SEC, even though the AP polls and On3 and other places will not vote Georgia number 1, which I think is asinine at this point. Is it possible that a Nick Saban team is finally overrated? And I think it's really hard to say because last week they won a game 55-0. And then this week they come and play a Texas team and only win 20-19. And I know we're going to hear the excuse. Well, Texas is coming to the SEC. And so they're SEC ready. No, Texas isn't there yet. And yes, Texas is recruiting at a high level, but they've always recruited at a high level. I'm not sure where the argument can be that, hey, Texas is coming to the SEC, so that's why we didn't play well, because they're an SEC talent. No, like, you played a true road game that was non-conference, because Texas isn't in your conference yet, and you struggled mightily. What could this Alabama team look like over the past decade if they had to go play more true road games? If they had to go to Ohio State, or to Oklahoma, or to USC, or Michigan, or whatever? Are those games closer, and do they potentially drop some of those? But we have to start off with the elephant in the room, and that's Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien's play selection at times was atrocious and just abysmal. The fact that Nick Saban let Bill O'Brien get back on the plane to go to Tuscaloosa yesterday, I think is a miracle in and of itself. And that's saying a lot, because you have the best quarterback in the country and your play calling was awful. Terrible. How does that happen? How do you have one of the best top 2 quarterbacks in the country and you can't call plays to help him succeed? Not to mention, that offensive line was getting destroyed yesterday because he was running for his life or he was getting sacked. And I know Bama fans, they don't want to hear about it. They don't want to think about, oh, well, yeah, like, maybe it's not as good as we thought. We pride ourselves on this. But, I mean, he got sacked twice, and he was running for his life all game, it felt like. It really did. And I feel like 2 sacks against an Alabama defense I feel like it's a lot. I don't know. You Alabama fans, tell me if I'm wrong. But there's another thing that killed Alabama in this game, and it was the penalties. And my God, did they have a lot of penalties. Over and over again in this game, Alabama kept making mistakes, with I think Will Anderson making 4 of those. I think Will Anderson potentially lost himself the Heisman conversation and Heisman campaign conversation with his performance today. Or on Saturday. I mean, they had 15, what was it? I think it was 15 penalties. Yeah, 15 penalties for 100 yards. That has to be the most undisciplined Nick Saban team that I have ever seen in my lifetime. And I have been watching college football, OU football, every Saturday since 2007. So since 2007, I sit down and watch college football every Saturday. And I've never seen a Nick Saban team play like this. Never be this undisciplined. It's quite clear that Alabama didn't play to Saban's standard. Saban's standard is the best. And the Crimson Tide did not look the best. But if you're Alabama, you have to look at it and look at the one plus in this game. The plus is, well, I guess there's 2. You're coming out healthy. And you also won a game. You figured out how to win a game when it mattered the most. And I think that's important. And that's something that the Alabama team can look at, and they can look back this week on and go, okay, like, we can build on this. We know what we're capable of. And we know that when it comes down to crunch time, we can put the ball in the end zone. Now, as for Texas, like, Quinn Ewers is better than I thought he was going to be. And as an OU fan, it kills me to say that. But he's better than I thought he would be. He looked good. And again, I'm going to side with you guys on this one. If he was in the game longer, y'all probably would have won that game. Now, I don't think the Quinn Ewers play was dirty. I think it was a football play. He was playing through the tackle. It just was a freak thing. I mean, Ewers is in the air, and he gets drilled to the ground. And Bijan Robinson, he had 21 carries for only 57 yards, but you guys still have the best running back in the country. Not to mention, you guys had yourself a day. Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittington showed you guys a lot. I think this Texas team is going in the right direction. Your guys' defense played really well. Really well. And, I know people are going to blame it on the safety and the refs. Listen, guys. It's the same thing I try to tell OU fans. Take the little wins as an improvement. You don't have to go undefeated this year and go win a national championship. If you win 8 games, but you see significant improvement on your team and your defense, then that's a win and that is a successful season. And so I know it sucks to lose this game, especially by 1 point, because you were this close to winning it. But I want you to think about it and go, okay, we can really build off this. We still have a chance to go win a Big 12 championship. But if you guys only win 8 games, I think you guys are going in the right direction. Okay. Next up, we got to talk about the team, and we don't know how much money they paid Marshall to come in there and beat them. But we know they paid him over $1 million to do it. Marshall comes into the University of Notre Dame and beats them 26-21. And they didn't just beat them. Marshall controlled this game. Marshall controlled this game against a Notre Dame team who last week went into the shoe, to the Buckeye Stadium, played Ohio State closely up until the final minutes of that game. And a lot of us were thinking, oh, this Notre Dame team actually looks pretty good. Tyler Buckner threw for 201 yards, threw 2 interceptions. Drew Pine came in, threw a touchdown, threw an interception. The turnovers obviously kill you. If you're Notre Dame, the turnovers kill you. My question is, if you're Notre Dame, how is your defense not good enough to stop Marshall? You let a guy in Kalen LeBourne, who I've never heard of before, have 31 carries for 163 yards. His longest rush was 42 yards. That's insane. If you're Notre Dame and you pride yourselves on defense, how do you let that happen? And then not to mention, there's just balanced receiving across the board. 38 yards, 24 yards, 22, 22, 14, 13. Like, balanced receiving across the board. Henry Columbi, or Columbi, I don't know his last name. I'll say his last name. Man, he's just able to throw wherever he wanted it to. I'm kind of worried about this Notre Dame team. They got a pretty tough schedule this year. I mean, you've lost to Ohio State and now Marshall. You still have to play probably what I expect to be a top 10 BYU team. I actually have BYU in my top 10. Yes, I have in my top 10. And then you have to go play a top 10 Clemson team and more than likely a top 10 USC team. There's a good chance that this Notre Dame team by the end of the year has 5 losses on the schedule. And right now, first-year head coach Marcus Freeman is now 0-3 as a head coach. That's going back to last year's bowl game where, he coached against Oklahoma State. So I don't know if you want to count that or not, but hey, you got to, in my rankings, you got to count it. He started that game. He was a head coach. It's going to be a rough year for Notre Dame fans. Right now, you guys hold 23 commits in the 2023 recruiting class. One of those being 5-star safety Peyton Bowen, who was at the OU game last night with Ryan Yates, Landon Sides, Jackson Arnold, his brother, Elijah. They were all there. It looks like they were having a great time because I went down and I actually talked to them all. I got to sit down with them. And if you're a Notre Dame team, I'm feeling a little worried. At one point, you guys had the number one class. You guys have already had 5-star Keon Keeley decommit from you guys. And it doesn't look like you guys are in a lot more recruiting battles. So I'm curious to see how Marcus Freeman can go ahead and turn this season around and potentially be able to help save the recruiting class a little bit. Because to me, it doesn't look like they're going to continue to be as successful as maybe they have been. Especially if OU continues to be better and Notre Dame continues to slip and fall. But 26-21 loss to Marshall. That's just uncalled for. I don't know how you. I don't know how. I just have no words. Sunbelt 2-0 so far against ranked teams yesterday, and congratulations to Marshall. We give it up to you. We give it up to you. Get the upset. All right. Michigan looked really good against Hawaii. J.J. McCarthy is announced a starter for UConn. I expect him to be the starter for the rest of the season. We've talked about it. J.J. McCarthy has the most potential. He has the highest ceiling on this game. I don't think anybody really expected Cade McNamara to be the starter this year. I think people really expected JJ to step up and take that role. So not a huge storyline there. Georgia beat Samford 33-0. Stetson Bennett threw for 300 yards. Big whoop. Ohio State beats Arkansas State 45-12. And did look at one point like their offense was getting a little bit slow, but they kind of put it on a little bit. Still don't know what to think about this team, but C.J. Stroud threw for 351 yards. They were missing Julian Fleming, and they were also missing Jackson Smith and Jigba. Clemson beat Furmon 35-12, and DJ Uiagalelei looked pretty good. Cade did not, but we'll see how they progress throughout the season. That's going to be an interesting quarterback battle. Baylor and BYU, the late night game, future Big 12 battle. Baylor gets upset by BYU in this game, 26-20 in 2 overtimes. And this is pretty interesting to see just where BYU is going to take this win and go with this season. Because for those of you who don't know, BYU has a really interesting schedule this year. So next week, they play at Oregon in Eugene. Then they have to go on October 8th to Notre Dame. Then they play Arkansas at home. And then they end the season at Stanford. There is a good chance that if BYU can run the table in this schedule, that they could be a team to get into the college football playoffs as a non-Power 5 team. Because I look at the schedule with a Baylor team that I expect by the end of the season to be a top 10 team. An Oregon team that, let's just be honest, like Oregon's Oregon. It's the brand Oregon. Like they're going to get credit for beating them. And then you're going to go beat Notre Dame if you go beat Notre Dame at home, and then you beat an Arkansas team, which I think is really good. You have made your case to get into the college football playoffs. Poor Arkansas, though. This will be the second time that they lose to a team that is a non-Power 5 that gets into the college football playoffs. But that's an if it happens. We'll get to that later. But BYU fought every inch on offense against Baylor, and my goodness, this was just a game. I mean, it was at some points like you looked at it and go, the offense was awful. And I'm not going to lie, guys. I started to watch it and I'm like, I'm going to bed. I can't do it. Let me just kind of give you, it's total yards was BYU 366, Baylor 289. Like the offensive play in this game was not good. This is like watching, it's not as bad as watching Iowa versus Iowa State though. Which Iowa State got that win, ended a 6-year losing streak to Iowa. Congratulations, 2-0 on the season. But BYU and Baylor, like it was not an offensive introduction game per se. Yeah. Props to BYU. I'm curious to see if Blake Shapen can turn it back on, what they're going to look like later in the season, especially as OU has to play them in Norman. USC versus Stanford, as most of you guys know, I called Stanford to win this game, so I was wrong on that one. USC won 41-28, so they more than well covered. Caleb Williams threw for 341 yards. Travis Dye ran for 105. Jordan Addison was the leading receiver at 172 yards. And it looks like that relationship and that connection between Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison is getting stronger here as the season continues to move on. Florida loses to Kentucky. Mark Stoops gets another premier win for the program, but I will say this was another scrappy win between two teams. Florida and Kentucky's offenses just do not look good. I'll be curious to see how Kentucky's offense looks as they get their running game back in order throughout the season. Other notable games, Arkansas beat South Carolina 44-30. Spencer Rattler threw for 376 yards, but ultimately I don't think he looked as good in this game. I'll be curious to see where he lands in the NFL draft. I still think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. I just don't think college is his game. Tennessee at Pittsburgh. Tennessee got a huge win, 34-27. Hendon Hooker got 325 yards. Israel, I don't know how to say his last name, 154 rushing yards. And Vanderbilt and Wake Forest. Now, I didn't call Vanderbilt for the upset on this one, but I said this was an interesting game to watch. And it was definitely pretty interesting as Wake won it 45-25. But multiple times did you see Vandy make it interesting. And I do believe if Sam Hartman wasn't in that game, there was probably a chance that Vanderbilt won that game at home. Texas Tech upsets Houston in Lubbock 33-30 in 2 overtimes. Donovan Smith just continues to impress as the starting quarterback for Texas Tech. Penn State rolled Ohio 46-10. Kansas State won 40-12 against Mizzou, and Deuce Vaughn ran for 145 yards, continuing his Heisman campaign early. Again, we talked about it. Iowa State won 10-7 versus Iowa. Hunter Deckers got 184 yards passing, with Xavier Hutchinson getting 98 of those yards. Good job to Iowa State for ending that 6-year losing streak. Again, Iowa's offense just looks terrible. Not sure how they're going to fare in Big Ten play as the season progresses. And then one of the biggest upsets of yesterday. Kansas goes into Morgantown and beats West Virginia 55-42 in overtime. JT Daniels threw for 355 yards. Wheaton had 152 of those, but man, Lance Leipold has this program going in the right direction, and I am really excited just to see where Kansas goes. Like, it's been a long time since we've seen Kansas be good, and they're starting off 2-0. Like, I want to know what the stats are for when the last time Kansas started 2-0 was. Jalen Daniels, their starting quarterback, threw for 219 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just what an incredible performance from him. I'm just curious to see, hey, can Kansas take this farther into play and continue to be as productive as they have been? They still have to play Houston, but it looks like Houston's been slipping up a lot. So the question is, if they can win that game, start the season 3-0, what kind of momentum will they take into the season? Okay, let's talk about it. Nebraska loses to Georgia Southern 45-42, and at this point, you would have to think Scott Frost is getting fired on October 1st. Maybe October 2nd. But he's definitely getting, you would think he's getting fired within the first week of his buyout going down. You lose to Georgia Southern, who, yes, the head coach at Georgia Southern is Clay Helton. But, come on. Really? I'm sorry, Nebraska fans. I feel for you. This is This is terrible. I don't know what else to say, guys. Like, it's rough for you guys out there. And there's a good chance you're going to lose to OU next week. You're going to be 1-3 heading into conference play. I mean, and then not only that, but during the game, Nebraska students started chanting "Fire Frost." I don't think if you're Nebraska, you want to pay the money to have Scott Frost fired before October 1st. Think you wait. It's going to be rough. It's going to be a long season for the Cornhuskers. There's a really good chance at this point that they're not going to cover their win total this year. They're definitely not, I don't think, getting to 7 wins. Because after Oklahoma, your schedule gets real tough with Indiana, Rutgers, Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa. Because all of those teams I just listed are better than North Dakota and Georgia Southern, and might be better than Northwestern. I would assume if you fire Frost, Mark Whipple takes over as the intern head coach and potentially becomes the head coach at Nebraska. Here's the problem. Nebraska, get out of the idea that you have to hire your guy. It does not have to be your guy, a guy from your program. Because that obviously hasn't worked out for you. Because, man, what you would trade to go back to the Bo Pelini years and be winning 9 games a season, especially in the Big Ten. I don't think there's anything else to say about this Nebraska team. It's just disappointing. It's extremely disappointing to see Nebraska at where they're at. I don't know what else to say. All right. Oklahoma versus Kent State, and this one was a rough one. So Oklahoma got out to a really slow start in the first half against Kent State, scored in the final seconds of that half, made it 7-3, and if I had to grade it, in the first half, I would give Oklahoma a C- on the offense. Actually, no. I'd give the offense an F, and I would give the defense a C-. Oh, well, okay, C. So an F for the offense, a C for the defense in the first half. However, the fans in the first half, I'm giving them about a B-. Better energy, still not where I would have liked it. Now, the second half of this game is where everything changed for OU. Started playing with the lights. Fans got a little bit more hyped. Dylan Gabriel and Jeff Lebby figured it out. Let's throw the ball to Marvin Mims. He caught 7 of those for 163 yards of Dylan Gabriel's 296 yards. Dylan Gabriel looked a little bit more accurate this week, throwing for 21 for 28 for 3 touchdowns. I would have liked to have seen Dylan Gabriel pass maybe 350 or get to 400 yards, but that wasn't in the cards. OU got 2 turnovers this week, which was exciting. Put up 430 yards of total offense. Kent State did beat Oklahoma in time of possession, 36 minutes to 23 minutes. We were tied in first downs at 20. But, yeah, I mean, what else do you say? The second half, you'd give this team a B+ in the second half as a collective whole. I'd give both the offense and the defense a B+. I'd give the crowd, the fans, and I'm going to separate the fans from the student section. So I'd give the non-student section fans an A, and I'd give the student section an A+, especially for the whole game. Y'all stayed. Y'all were here. Y'all showed up after we criticized you. Congratulations. You finally put it together. Continue to do that, even when it's hot. Hydrate. Hydrate. You don't have to go drink your beer during the game, and you don't have to go get ready for your parties later. Like, you can do that after the game. But congratulations for staying. You guys did it. You guys put it together. So, I want to give you guys some 3 takeaways that I found that were pretty good from the game. We talked about it. Dylan Gabriel. Don't even get back to that one again. Daniel Parker and Marvin Mims. So, I thought Daniel Parker, even though he only caught 2 receptions for 21 yards. It was nice to see what he was going to look like out there, especially coming in at 6'2", 250 pounds at the tight end spot. I just wondered what he was going to look like. And I thought he looked a lot better. Like, I thought, okay, like, he's going to be a good target for Dillon Gabriel. Additionally, Dillon Gabriel's got himself a man in Marvin Mims, and we knew that. I'm curious to see how Theo Weiss and Jalil Farouk fit in there. And then also, the student section. We talked about it. They stayed, loving it. However, the one area of improvement that OU has to make is the offensive line. And gosh, that offensive line is awful. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think Wanye Morris makes that big of an impact. Now, I will say this. Wanye Morris coming in would be huge. It'd be huge. My thing is, sometimes offensive linemen do play better on certain sides of the line. And that's not uncommon. But, yeah, like, I don't know. Sorry, guys, if you notice, my head's not in the right place. We just got the news. The Nebraska Huskers have fired Scott Frost. Scott Frost is out of there. Mark Whipple in. And, it's been a disappointing start to their season. So that's actually shocking that they did not wait to fire Scott Frost. They fired him now. Scott Frost is out of there. Nebraska, please make the right coaching hire. Don't make a bad coaching hire here. You've got a chance to right the ship. Write it correctly. Okay, that's all that we have for today. Be looking for some additional videos later this week coming up for week 3. And then also we've got some other special guests coming on to talk about week 2 and week 3 as well. So go ahead, be tuning in for those. If you guys watch this or listen to this on any of the major podcast platforms, leave me 5 stars, write me a review. It really helps me out and helps me grow and bring you guys great content as well.